Hello, my name is Saket Gore, and I work for the Himalaya Drug Company for the Asia Pacific region. Today, we're going to talk on business transformation. Uh, I'm sure all of us have heard of this particular word. It's a very heavy word, transformation. A lot of organizations use different words for this. Many times we heard of change. Businesses need to change, product needs to change, and perhaps the right word for that is evolution. All of us, our ancestors were apes, and the man has evolved from being an ape to what we are today. Same thing is companies change, companies need to change. What I would perhaps feel is that company needs to evolve, and the need for evolution is I would not say the companies become obsolete, but the company's product become obsolete. The reason why they become obsolete is, or more than that, let me just say that as an example, when you go back and look at New York Stock Exchange, and not many years back, just 30 odd years back, out of the top 100 companies which were there on New York Stock Exchange, 50 of them today are no longer present. They are no longer present as businesses, or they have perhaps fallen back. The reason is not because the companies became obsolete, but the product becomes obsolete. The products were not necessarily bad, but the product became obsolete. And let's talk about a few examples. Why does that happen? It happens because consumers don't change. Okay, consumers are the same. The consumers' expectation, their habits, and their needs keep evolving. A simple example, what you have there on the screen is a telephone. This is a product, this was an invention which happened maybe 100 years back. It was invented because people wanted to talk to each other when the distances were more. That need hasn't changed. People, in fact, like to talk more today. It's just the way they actually talk are different. 100 years back, people used to travel, not 100 years back, maybe 3, 4, 5, 600 centuries back, people had to travel. 100 years back, people would travel by using horse carriage. Then there was invention of cars. So people started going from one place to another by using cars. From there, commercial aircraft started. From commercial aircraft, there are today private aircrafts. And you do not know, maybe another 50 years time, there would be some other form of transportation that would be evolved. So people haven't changed. The expectation of people actually keep changing. And that is what makes companies or the products obsolete. If they don't evolve over time, if they don't change the products over time, transformation doesn't happen is when uh, companies go bankrupt, or companies basically become, I would correct myself, companies don't become obsolete, the product becomes obsolete. People change, the consumers change over from one product to another. I spoke of change, I spoke of transformation, and one of the most important aspects of transformation is communication. Have here a visual of the ex-president of United States of America, uh, Jack Kennedy. Way back in 1960s, okay, early 60s, he made a very, very bold statement. He said that we choose to go to the moon. Now, this statement was made somewhere in 1961, and commercial flying was at infancy stage. That means most people on this planet had not entered an aircraft. And this was a very bold statement he was making, that by end of this decade, that is by end of 60s, he said, we will put a man on the moon and bring him back safely. And that to me is communication. That to me is simple communication. That to me is a statement what he wanted to achieve. Two aspects here. One is, in business language, this is also called as vision. Okay, that is a word that we use, which is vision. And always as a leader, you need to state what is expected. That particular vision, that particular statement needs to ensure action. And that action here is what is made this statement not only to all people, all citizens of USA, but perhaps to all citizens of this planet, where he inspired everybody to think scientifically and make space travel real. And that is what perhaps inspired a man, a person, to travel to the moon and come back. And that's what Neil Armstrong achieved, I think, in 1969. But this is what is the biggest and most simplest thing that you need to do to bring in transformation. And the essential word here is simplicity. This is an acronym. A lot of us would have heard this, which is the KISS principle, saying keep it simple and stupid. Okay. The reason I use this is another aspect which all of us have seen in the last 15, 20 years back. Whenever we bought a electronic good, whether it is a television, whether it is a refrigerator, whether it is a washing machine, the physical product would travel to your residence, to your home, and there would be a service engineer which would come to your place to install that product. Or forget about a larger electronic good. When you bought a mobile phone, there was a 150 page instruction manual which would come along with that product as to how to use it. Consumers today have evolved to an extent where they no longer want to read an instruction manual, not only for a refrigerator or a television, but also for a mobile phone where they just want to plug in, switch it on, and it should be usable. And that is what is the evolution of product design. Companies need to ensure that their products are so easy that they don't need to teach people, or people don't need to teach themselves on how to use it. And that perhaps for me is evolution. That is what the needs and expectations of people are, that I don't want to apply my thought on how do we start using it. I have bought a product, I paid money for it, I paid dollars for it, I want to start using it from the next moment. Let's look at some of the technologies which have actually been easy, which were simple. We spoke about use of technology and digital transformation, and the essential element of this particular transformation has to be simplicity and ease. And I said we will look at a couple of examples. And the simplest example which comes to my mind is M-Pesa. M-Pesa stands for M-Money or mobile money. It started not in a Western country, but it's actually started in an African country, in Kenya. They started in 2007 in Kenya, where smartphones were not even launched. Mr. Steve Jobs had still not launched iPhone, perhaps in 2007, and M-Pesa started on feature phones. It is a very, very simple app. Now, this was an app which was used without a smartphone, where you could transfer money from one telephone to another person. You just needed a telephone number of the other person. And how easy was this application? And I said, without a smartphone, this is what was used. It completely revolutionized money transaction in Kenya. And look at 2007. In 2007, 99% of Kenya did not have 99% citizens in Kenya did not have access to formal banking. But with use of M-Pesa, almost 96% of all households today use M-Pesa to transfer money. So every money transaction, whether you're buying groceries, whether you're making school fees, or you're paying school fees for your kids, or you're giving pocket money to your kids, what today you see Paytm in India or in a lot of other countries, different apps have been used. This is M-Pesa, which was launched way back in 2007. And you did not have to learn how to use a smartphone. Through a feature phone, you could transfer money. And this is where technology, ease of technology and simplicity comes in place. It completely revolutionized how people transacted. So you just imagine you buying a grocer or you buying a cup of tea from a street vendor. You just need to use transfer money from your phone to that person by getting to know the person's telephone number. This happened almost 14, 15 years back. This is ease of technology, and this actually is transformation. This completely perhaps changed the banking system. There was no need of a bank. And if you say that banking in Kenya did not evolve, or maybe the larger banks perhaps would go out of business, is because they did not evolve, because this is what consumers were using. Today, not today, I would say, let's say 17, 18 months back, all of us got introduced to a new word called COVID. That's a pandemic which all of us are facing right now. There were a lot of harmful effects of COVID, but it has also brought in another change in which people are looking at healthcare. When we look at the developed world, when we look at slightly developed countries like Singapore or let's say Dubai, there is one doctor available for every 500, 600 citizens. But when you look at developing countries like India or Indonesia, which are bigger countries in terms of geography as well as population, you have one doctor available perhaps for 50,000 people. And in case, God forbid, if you need to visit a doctor, you need to travel. Okay, you need to physically travel to meet a doctor. And what the use of technology has made it possible is that a doctor today is available to each and all of you via either using a desktop, a laptop, or through a mobile phone. Just imagine what this particular use of technology has done to transform healthcare needs, where when you are ill, when you need a doctor, you are not in a great space physically where you want to go to a doctor, visit a hospital. If it's a specialist, you might get an appointment in a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or maybe next month. Here, you can actually access any doctor all over the world whenever you need. So suddenly, healthcare is now available to a lot of citizens across the world, and it is made healthcare available on fingertips. This clearly is similar to how M-Pesa revolutionized money transaction in Kenya, and this perhaps is changing healthcare needs for every citizen. All the 7.5 billion people on this planet would have access to good healthcare. The expectation from industry and the expectation from all of us is to make use of technology easy. I'm from healthcare profession, and we know that 90% of most ailments can be addressed if a doctor, a general practitioner, can get access to your blood pressure, can get access to your sugar levels, and access to temperature, body temperature. All these three things can be tested at your residence. You just need to pass on this simple information to the doctor, and most of the ailments can be addressed with this simple by use of technology. Medicine can be reached to the residents. The doctor can actually meet more patients because you are avoiding physical travel. So there is one doctor today who could perhaps attend to 5 patients in an hour. Today, one doctor could actually attend almost 10 to 12 patients in an hour. So use of technology is actually transforming how we look at healthcare. Let's move on. Let's look at what perhaps as all industry leaders, we need to use technology to transform business. We use simplification as a word. What we perhaps need to look at is how do we use future technologies to do or improve the ease of business. Let's take an example. Today, there are shipments which move or goods go from one port to another. Okay, I repeat, goods move from, let's say, Western country, goods move from China, they go to US, goods go from China, they go to Europe, or goods come from India, they go to Indonesia. The important aspect here is that goods move from one port to another. We don't need documents to move. And people who are in the business community, they will realize that you need to print invoices, you need to print bills, and there is a hell of documentation which needs to be couriered from port A to port B. I'm interested as a consumer, and we go back and look at the manual example, that I'm interested to use the product, and here the product is physical movement of goods. I'm not interested perhaps to get physical copies of invoices and bills. The physical copies of invoices and bills are required for collection of goods and making payments. Physical goods have moved. Why should we actually move physical copies of invoices and bills? When you are using paper, it also involves a lot of trees get actually cut. Trees get cut to actually make paper. When you are printing those invoices, you have 3 copies, 4 copies, 5 copies of each document which is actually moving. You are harming the environment. And that is where we perhaps as industry members need to look at using technologies like blockchain to reduce physical movement of paper. A lot of us use emails to write communication. Then why do we need to use paper invoices, paper bills to move goods? Similarly, July, all of you would have seen that, especially in the Western world, the Northern Hemisphere, there are forest fires. fires which are raging on for days together. July 2021 was one of the hottest months that has got ever registered, and this is all happening because of climate change. The earth is getting warmer. All of us need to do something to actually contribute towards reducing the temperature on this earth, or we need to make the earth slightly cooler. And sustainability is something which is given. I'm based in Singapore, and today, because of the pandemic, whenever we travel, any public space that we travel, we use an app called Trace Together. It is required to track your movement. So if physical movement of people's are getting tracked, what we can use technology to you transform ourselves or transform businesses, that every packing material, whether you use a toothpaste, whether you use a shampoo, whether you use a toilet soap, whether the coffee that you had at your Starbucks, how do we track every packing material that is being used, which should get tracked? How do we trace that? How do we recycle that packing material? It would go a long, long way to do our way of reducing harmful effects on environment by using a lot of plastic, using a lot of packing material. And this, I would say, would be the true service to mankind by using digital transformation. These are my thoughts on what, as business leaders, we need to do by using technology, what we could actually do to make people's life simple and make people life less stressful. Thank you.